What's up, guys? I'm Josh Pate. That is Sir Stephen Wiltfong. It is the weekly Wiltfong recruiting Whiparound. I'm looking at the watch, Steve, right there. There it is. And early signing day is about a month away. That's when you and I will be in sunny Fort Lauderdale, and we'll be talking about Texas A&M potentially, Georgia potentially. But we got so many names out there, so many schools, and still undecided with a lot of these races. And there's one that's really big, and it just popped back on the radar big time in the past couple of weeks. So I got to ask you about Domani Jackson, because that's the name our viewers keep asking us about. Was committed to USC, no longer committed to USC. And now you got a bunch of big names in the race again. So Stephen, start us off. Where's Domani Jackson?
Well, one of the schools you did not mention there, because you threw in Texas A&M and you threw in Georgia. There's a third school battling for number one. It's Alabama. They're looking to finish atop the 24/7 sports recruiting standings for a 10th time over the last 12 cycles. And I love the way it's trending for them and five-star cornerback Domani Jackson. I got a call last Friday from a source around the USC that said, hey, all the right variables are not on our side right now. No head coach. He's deciding on the 15th. Is USC going to have a coach by the 15th, Josh?
I'm going to tilt my neck that way, which means I have no idea, because they have no idea.
I mean, they executed their last coach first, right?
Yes.
And that would just be an epic disaster to not have a coach by the early signing period. When you let go, maybe one of the nicest guys in college football, to put yourself in position to have a big fish, two land guys like Domani Jackson. So who knows? We'll see who they get. But Alabama checks every box for Domani Jackson. This is a young man that's been on our radar for 3 years now, as a guy that was going to be elite, one of the more talked about players in the class. You know, he is an extremely hard worker. He's a specimen. He's a hard hitter on the perimeter. He's got elite speed, and Alabama checks all the boxes he's looking for in a school. You know, he wants to play for championships. He wants to be developed. He wants to compete against the best in practice, and went on a great visit, has a strong relationship with Jay Valai, who's got a ton of energy. You know, Nick Saban's track record is obvious. Anytime you sit down with Nick Saban and talk about your potential college decision, as you would guess, Josh, he's very on point with his message about why a young man should pick Alabama. And I think that Domani has the right personality. You know, when you talk about kids that are considering Alabama, they're not looking at depth charts. They're not looking at who's already there. They're not looking at who's coming in with them. They're betting on themselves that this place is going to maximize their ability. And I think that Alabama has everything that Domani's looking for. Michigan is in the mix for him. He's going to visit Michigan this weekend. Great relationship with Coach Klink and Coach Harbaugh and that staff. His dad is a Michigan fan. He's grown up around the Maize and Blue program his whole life with that. Has great connections with Will Johnson and people in that Michigan recruiting class. He's no stranger to that campus, and Michigan has a lot of what he's looking for too. I think coming into the weekend visit, Alabama, though, is clearly the one to beat. So we'll see if Michigan can make a move. And I think USC's just at a standstill right now with Domani. Is Dante Williams going to be back on the staff? What's it going to look like moving forward? Just a ton of question marks at USC. So they're not even moving. Alabama's the front runner. Michigan's in the race. And I guess it's wait and see what happens with USC. And I think one other interesting thing with Alabama, Josh, is that he's enrolling early. He could get out there and compete on the scout team for a few practices with the team and maybe help them win a national title this year. You remember Brian Brzee a few years ago making noise on the Clemson scout team as an early enrollee. You could see something like that with Domani Jackson at Alabama.
So this past week, a school that we've talked about a lot, Florida State, they end up beating Miami down in Doak. And so there's a lot of talk always, Steve, around that game. FSU, Miami, big recruiting implications. And then there's also the talk around Miami right now. The AD down there was let go. It's thought that maybe we may see a head coaching change there in the not so distant future. So I want you to kind of reassess things for me coming off that game. How big is the outcome, specifically when it comes to recruiting, and then the overall volatile nature of Miami, and for that matter, Florida right now? Is Florida State benefiting from that as much as an outsider would think they are?
Well, you know, before the season, 24/7 Sport. I talked about this on Noah's 247's podcast On the Bench this morning. Before the season, there were people that said that Dan Mullen was the best head coach recruiter in the state of Florida. Do you remember that poll that we had?
I do remember that, yeah.
And I quote tweeted it and said I would vote Norvell and Jeff Scott. And you gotta win. You gotta win to help your recruiting efforts. But Mike Norvell brings a ton of energy to the recruiting trail, and from the top down, that staff gets after it on the trail. But sometimes you're only as good as your product on the field. And a win over Miami, I think, was massive for Florida State because it certainly sets the echelon of where they stand compared to Miami, right? And it's a newer staff at Florida State. Arrow up. They beat a Miami team that had won 3 ball games in a row, so they were playing well. So I think that win means something in that regard too. And so with that, it gives them a little more juice on the trail, particularly with younger kids in 2023 and 2024 who they brought in. But as you're trying to gain momentum and closing your 2022 class strong, that ranks number 13 nationally, to beat Miami in front of Marvin Jones Jr., to beat them in front of 5-star offensive tackle Keontae Goodwin, Wesley Besaint, Kamari Wilson, Katron Allen, a top 247 running back committed to Penn State. I think Florida State's got a good chance to flip him. And so it's a win that if you lose, you're 3-7, you're out of postseason consideration. Yes, you still get to play Boston College in Florida, but now you get to play Boston College in Florida with a different kind of energy because you just beat your bitter rival Miami in an exciting game in front of some touted recruits. And it really can help you finish strong with maybe overcome. I thought they were third for Marvin, trailing Alabama and Oklahoma. Maybe they still are, but I think they got a better chance after a great weekend where they got after Miami's quarterback and were in the backfield a ton. I just, that was a massive win as you're trying to build up your program.
Look, I was perusing the message boards as you're one to do on weekends in the fall. And so I know that Walter Nolan recently made a huge splash, like a cannonball splash, Steve, when he committed to Texas A&M. So, I get Texas, not a secret. He's visiting Tennessee. He wasn't with his whole family entourage. It's just him over there. And that sounds like interesting news to me. But then I run it by you and you just took a fire extinguisher and you finished the story for me. So tell me why I probably should not look too deeply into Walter Nolan being in Knoxville.
And I'm getting into my phone here because he was in Knoxville by himself, also left at halftime. I'm told they're pretty early. And he's supposed to go back for an official visit in December. And Tennessee is going to keep trying, and they're in it. And Rodney Garner, they love Rodney Garner. Family loves Coach Heupel and Tennessee and really the trajectory of that program. But I think they just like Texas A&M more. And I get a text after Le'Veon Moss commits to the Aggies about from Walter's dad. They got a special class building at A&M. It's like, no kidding, your son's the jewel of it. But he wrote, and I mean it's potentially a top 1 class in the making on Mr. Nolan, and so I think Walter's doing his part in helping recruit kids to Texas A&M as well.
You cannot land them if you don't get them on campus. A wise man once told me that, and it is proving true every single year. Stephen Wiltfong, 247sports.com. Keep it locked there for all the latest as early signing day rapidly approaches. Stephen, I will see you next week.
Joshua, my man.